Nicki Minaj, by name, on the record, accusing the most powerful man in hip-hop of destroying her career from the inside. $200 million in alleged unpaid title equity. A blasphemy charge against the name Jay-Z built his entire empire on. Claims that his organization has been running bots, paying blogs, and pulling strings across the industry to keep her quiet. This war has been playing out in tweets and rants for 2 years. But Nicki just made a move that takes it somewhere completely different. She just went inside Jay-Z's own camp and snatched someone he cannot afford to lose. Let's get into it. Nicki Minaj just tagged Tony Busby and told him to check his DMs. A tweet posted, deleted, caught, and screenshotted before she could pull it back. And the second that name appeared on her timeline, every lawyer in Jay-Z's orbit felt it. Because Tony Busby is not a random attorney. He is the man who marched into a federal court and accused Jay-Z of raping a 13-year-old girl at a 2000 MTV VMAs after-party. He is the man Jay-Z countersued for extortion and defamation, a suit a judge dismissed in July 2025, which Jay-Z is still appealing. A separate Roc Nation attorney suit against Busby is still active in court right now. These two men are at war. And Nicki Minaj just told Busby she wants to talk. Why is it always the same story? 4 seconds of audio, the thesis of Nicki's entire 2-year campaign. She is not presenting herself as an isolated case. She is the latest name on a list that goes back decades. Nas, DMX, Dame Dash, Dipset, 50 Cent, artists who found themselves in publicly documented conflicts with Jay-Z, and who many believe were on the losing end of power dynamics they could not match. Nicki's message: I am not the first, and I am the one who finally has a platform big enough to say it without backing down. $100 to $200 million. Publicly, with her name on it. She says the debt traces directly to Jay-Z's title deal, where she was brought in as a founding artist partner with equity, and where she claims she was paid out just $1 million when Jay-Z sold title to Block in 2021 for approximately $302 million. The claim is on the record, it is specific, and it has not been directly denied. 55 years old and using bots. She is not just accusing Jay-Z of owing her money. She is saying he is actively running coordinated, inauthentic operations on social media to suppress her claims and manage the narrative. She has accused blogs and online platforms of being disincentivized from covering her statements about Jay-Z, attributing the media silence directly to Roc Nation's leverage over the people who cover this industry. The hosts laugh, but strip the absurdity away, and Nicki is pointing at industries where Jay-Z has documented structural power. Roc Nation produces the NFL halftime show. He runs sports management. He has had documented influence at Billboard and streaming platforms. The levers she says he pulled, they exist. Whether he weaponized them against her is the contested question. But the machinery is real. Academics, not a Nicki ally, a daily industry voice, says she is speaking facts on Jay-Z and Roc Nation. Vlad, in the same breath, calls her unhinged. Both men connected, both with sources, no agreement possible. That split is not a bug, it is the feature. An argument that forces even skeptics to say, well, actually maybe is far harder to kill than one that is pure conspiracy. Now that you have the 5-alarm version of where this stands today, let's go back and build the full map. Because to understand why the Busby move matters so much, you have to understand everything Nicki has been laying down for the past 2 years. You have to understand the money, the Super Bowl, the industry silencing she is alleging, and the spiritual war she has declared. And it all starts with a streaming platform that was supposed to change everything. So where does this $200 million number actually come from? The answer goes back to 2015, a moment that looked, at the time, like a revolution. When Jay-Z launched Tidal, he did not just acquire a company, he staged a cultural event. He put together a group of the biggest names in music and stood them on a stage as co-owners, not employees, not endorsers, owners. Nicki Minaj was one of those founding artist partners. So was Rihanna. So was J. Cole. Each of them reportedly received equity stakes in exchange for their involvement, their names, their audiences, their credibility as the foundation of something new. But then came the sale, when Jay-Z sold a majority stake in Tidal to Block, formerly Square, for approximately $302 million in 2021. Nicki says she received $1 million. $1 million out of $300 million. She has framed that number as the original wound, the karmic debt, and every day since has been in her telling, the interest compounding on top of it. And tied directly to that wound is the Super Bowl angle, the most recent and most personally charged acceleration of all of this. Lil Wayne, a New Orleans native and Nicki's longtime collaborator from Young Money, was passed over to perform at the Super Bowl halftime show in New Orleans. Roc Nation, through its NFL partnership, had direct influence over that selection. In Nicki's telling, and in Wayne's public statements, that was not a neutral entertainment decision. That was a choice made by someone with a grudge. That is where we are. That is the foundation of everything. And in the next chapter, we get into what happened when Nicki stopped fighting Jay-Z as a businessman and started fighting him as something else, something spiritual, something that pulled the name of God into the middle of a hip-hop beef. And that is when things got truly extraordinary. What makes this part of the story so fascinating is that Nicki did not stumble into spiritual territory accidentally. She walked into it deliberately, with both eyes open, at the exact moment when she needed to do something that financial accusations alone could not accomplish. Financial accusations can be disputed with lawyers and accounting records. Spiritual accusations land differently. They speak to something a court cannot adjudicate. The question of character, of what a person fundamentally is, of whether the power they wield comes from a place of integrity or from something much darker. And Nicki, who has spoken publicly about her faith, knows exactly what she is doing when she plants her flag there. Let's start with the name. Not Jay-Z, not Sean Carter. The other name. The one his fans have called him for 30 years. The name that Nicki Minaj has now declared to be an act of blasphemy against God himself. H-O-V, Jehovah. The name has never been subtle. It is a deliberate invocation of Jehovah, the Hebrew name for God, wrapped inside a rap alias and deployed as branding for 30 years. For most of that time, the culture accepted it as artistic hyperbole, the kind of grandiosity you expect from someone who genuinely is one of the greatest to ever do it. But Nicki Minaj is now saying, this is not hyperbole, this is blasphemy. And anyone who participates in it, anyone who calls him H-O-V, will answer to God for it. That is an extraordinary statement, and it reframes the entire conflict. Suddenly, this is not just about money and title and the Super Bowl. This is a moral and spiritual indictment. The voices amplifying Nicki's spiritual argument go further. They point to specific lyrics, a Jay-Z song in which he reportedly says, Jesus cannot save you. They point to Family Feud, in which he tells his wife, the spiritual stuff really works, and argue he is not talking about Christ. They ask, what exactly is the spiritual source Jay-Z is claiming to operate from? And they frame the answer in terms that will land very differently, depending on who in the audience is listening. What kind of witchcraft are you operating out of? That is not a rhetorical device. It is a sincere spiritual inquiry by people who believe Jay-Z's decades-long use of sacred naming and lyrical claims about divinity constitutes something that deserves to be taken seriously on a religious level. Whether or not you share that framework, a significant portion of Nicki's fan base and a significant portion of Black America does share it. When Nicki plants her flag there, she is speaking directly to those people. She is saying, I see what he is doing. I name it, and God sees it too. And she is not alone in making this case. One of the most famous people in the world has been saying something remarkably similar, with even more fury, if that is possible. A figure who has his own very public, very documented falling out with Jay-Z. A figure whose willingness to say the unsayable about powerful people in the industry has cost him enormous amounts of social capital, industry relationships, and by his own account, far more than that. His name is Kanye West. And what he says about Jay-Z in this next clip is essentially the same argument Nicki has been constructing. just stripped of all the diplomatic framing. Kanye West. Not a Nicki ally in any traditional sense. A figure with his own well-documented grievances against Jay-Z. And yet here he is, making essentially the same argument. That Jay-Z built his empire on practices harmful to black people. That the culture's love for his music has functioned as a kind of amnesia. A willingness to forget things that should not be forgotten. When Kanye and Nicki are operating in the same register, pointing at the same target, making structurally similar arguments about accountability and spiritual integrity, that is not a coincidence. That is a convergence. And convergences in hip-hop tend to signal something real, shifting underneath the surface. But here is the counterweight. Because not everyone receiving these arguments is a barb or already predisposed to believe the worst about Jay-Z. And what happens when those arguments hit people in the middle, industry connected with real sources on both sides, captures the central tension of this story perfectly. Absolutely. That word from academics sitting across from Vlad is one of the most significant admissions in any of these clips. He is not saying Roc Nation paid him. He is saying he believes the practice of financial incentivization through surrogates is real, that it exists, that it shapes what gets covered and how, and that the media ecosystem around Jay-Z is not a neutral one. Now take that admission and lay it directly next to Nicki's claim that blogs are being disincentivized from covering her statements. They are describing the same machine from two different angles. The connective tissue between those statements is uncomfortable, but it is right there in plain sight. I want you to understand every layer of what just happened on that stage. Deon Cole is a respected and celebrated figure in black entertainment. The NAACP Image Awards is not the BET Hip Hop Awards. It is a formal, prestigious ceremony, not the venue where you expect someone to deliver an anatomically specific mock prayer about the mental state of the most famous female rapper alive. And yet there he was, on that stage, with that prayer. The reason it matters is not the joke itself. It is what it signals about where Nicki's public standing is within the industry establishment right now. Deon Cole did not do that bit in a vacuum. He did it because there is a version of this narrative, the version the industry establishment has largely coalesced around, in which Nicki's escalating war against Jay-Z reflects something going wrong with her, not something being exposed about him. And by delivering that prayer at that ceremony, in front of that audience, he gave institutional credibility to that framing. He made the Nicki is the problem narrative feel like consensus. Whether it actually is consensus, or whether it is the product of exactly the media machinery Nicki has been describing, is a question worth sitting with. But here is what Nicki's critics keep forgetting. She does not back down when she is mocked. She escalates. And next, we are going to walk through exactly what that escalation looks like, and why the moves she is making now are the most strategically significant of this entire campaign. The money is on the table. The spiritual warfare has been declared. The NAACP prayer has been prayed. And now we come back to where we started, because the Busby move is not just the most recent development in this story. It is the most structurally important one. It is the moment where a 2-year social media campaign starts developing real legal architecture. To understand why it matters as much as it does, you need the full picture of what Nicki is building, the pattern she is assembling piece by piece, the legal vulnerability she is currently navigating without her longtime attorney, and why Jay-Z's sustained silence in the face of all of it is, at this point, a strategic posture that is becoming increasingly difficult to hold. I don't think it's a coincidence anymore. That statement from academics is significant precisely because of what it is and is not. It is not a specific allegation. It is not a named crime. It is pattern recognition. The acknowledgement that when you map the full arc of Roc Nation's conduct across multiple artists, multiple deals, and multiple public conflicts, what emerges is not consistent with random chance. That is the same case Nicki has been making for 2 years. And when the person across the table from him calls her unhinged, academics holds the line. He distinguishes between Nicki's general behavior, which he acknowledges can be erratic, and her specific claims about Jay-Z and Roc Nation, which he treats as deserving serious evaluation. And here is where the legal picture gets interesting, because Nicki's longtime attorney, Judd Burstein, dropped her in November 2025, mid-litigation, on a separate defamation case, which means she has been navigating this without her primary legal counsel at the exact moment the conflict has reached its highest temperature. That context is crucial for understanding why she is on X instead of in a courtroom, and why the Busby tag is such a significant signal. She is not just venting, she is publicly advertising that she is in the market for legal firepower at the highest level. Academics is drawing the line that everyone watching this story needs to understand. There is Nicki Minaj, the internet personality, prone to hyperbole, capable of overreach, with a history of beefs that have sometimes gone sideways. And then there is Nicki making specific claims about specific people at a specific company with whom she has documented contractual and financial history. Those are two different things, and Academics is saying the second category deserves its own evaluation, separate from the noise. Desiree Perez is the CEO of Roc Nation. Nicki's claims about Perez's role in coordinating industry interference are specific, named, and detailed in a way that goes beyond a social media meltdown. Whether those claims are ultimately proven is a separate question from whether they deserve to be taken seriously. And Academics is saying, take them seriously. That is the most honest challenge to Nicki's entire campaign that anyone has raised publicly, and it deserves a real answer. The first part of that answer is Burstein. Her attorney dropping her mid-conflict left her legally exposed at the worst possible moment. The second part is that equity disputes in entertainment deals are notoriously difficult to litigate. What is promised informally rarely matches what is in writing, and what is in writing is controlled by the party with the better lawyers. The third part, and the most strategically interesting, is that social media pressure, sustained long enough, shifts settlement calculus. It changes what a jury pool looks like before a trial ever begins. If Jay-Z or Roc Nation responds to public pressure by making a legal move, a cease and desist, a defamation filing, Nicki suddenly has standing in a public platform she did not have before. The chaos may be the plan. That clip is Academics explaining exactly how Jay-Z's influence operates in the media ecosystem, not through explicit payments in every case, but through aligned financial interests. People who have business relationships with Jay-Z, who have made money through his orbit, who stand to make more. Those people have an incentive to protect the narrative around him that has nothing to do with personal loyalty or being paid off. It is just basic economics. And that structural reality is what Nicki is fighting against every time she posts something about Jay-Z and watches it get ignored by the outlets that will spend 3 days covering a much smaller story from a less powerful target. She has said publicly that she has been adding blogs and content creators to lawsuits for covering her with less diligence than they would apply to anyone else in this conflict. Whether those suits go anywhere is a separate question. What they signal is a woman who understands the terrain she is operating on and who is running out of patience for working within a system she believes is rigged against her. Liars are now the face of our culture. Kanye said it. Nicki has been living it. Or at least that is the story she is telling. And Jay-Z, 55 years old, sitting on $1 billion empire, surrounded by the best lawyers money can buy, has said nothing. His silence has always been strategic. In an earlier era, it read as power. The accusations are beneath me. Engaging would only elevate the accuser. But we are not in that era. Sustained, specific accusations from multiple credible voices over an extended period of time start to look less like something you are above and more like something you are managing. And you cannot manage indefinitely when the other side keeps escalating. When she grabs your lawyer, when she tags Busby, when she builds a narrative architecture so interlocking that every move you make feeds back into the story she is already telling. What Nicki has constructed, from the title money claims to the HOV blasphemy charge to the NAACP prayer to the Busby DM, is not a series of disconnected rants. It is a layered, escalating campaign with financial, spiritual, media, and legal dimensions simultaneously in play. His silence becomes evidence of guilt. His legal moves become evidence of intimidation. His industry influence becomes evidence of exactly the machine she is describing. Every piece feeds back into the story. And that is why this is one of the most significant things happening in hip-hop right now. For the first time in a long time, someone with the platform, the resources, the cultural capital, and the absolute absence of visible fear is standing in the open and saying, "The Emperor has been operating without accountability for years, and I am going to keep saying it until someone responds, or until a courtroom forces the answer out into the open." Nicki Minaj is not done. Jay-Z has not made his move. The legal system moves slowly. When the next chapter breaks, we will be here to walk you through every detail. Subscribe so you do not miss it, and drop a comment. Do you think Nicki is telling the truth, overplaying her hand, or both at the same time? Because if you watch this whole video, you know the honest answer is probably more complicated than either side wants you to believe.